Yes, students, very good morning. In the last session, we had seen about the main components of disaster management. So now let us see about disaster impact and response. First of all, we must search, rescue, and must give the first aid. We have to search the persons or the living organisms, those who have got trouble into the disaster place. We have to search, we have to rescue them, and must give the first aid to them. Field care to be given, we have to take care of the health needs, injury management, center for inquiry, priority for identification, and mortuary space. So, in the field care, we have to do all these activities. Then, triage. We have to classify of the injury and manage the modality. What is the color code system? We must know the color code system. If it is red color, then it shows the high priority treatment. Yellow means medium priority. Green, ambulatory patients. Black, moribund and dead patients. Tagging. All the patients should be identified with the tag. Tag. In the tag, what are the things to be mentioned? Name of the patient or name of the victim, place of origin, triage category, whether belong to red or green or black, yellow. So triage category, diagnosis and the initial treatment, what is given, everything to be in the tag. So all patients should be identified with tag. Identification of death as follows. We have to identify the persons those who have dead and removal of dead from the disaster scene. We have to remove the dead body from the disaster place to the mortuary. Identification, reception of the bereaved relatives, proper respect for the dead people. Relief phase. What is to be done in the relief phase? When assistance from outside starts to reach disaster area, it takes time to get the assistance from outside. Relief supplies are determined by the disaster type and quantity of supplies, whether it is available locally. If it is okay, we can avail it. If not, we have to get it from the outside source. What are the health needs to be given during the relief time? Means food. We have to give proper nutritious dietary food. Food supply is to be there. Blankets, clothing, shelter, sanitary engineering equipments, construction materials, purified water, everything needs during the relief phase. The principal components in managing humanitarian supply. Acquisition of supplies. We have to must collect the supplies, needy materials. We have to transport it to the disaster place where we have to store these supplies and we have to distribute it according to the need of the victims. Then, epidemiological surveillance and disease control. Communicable diseases are transmitted during disaster because at the time of disaster there will be overcrowding. Poor sanitation will be there. Temporary resettlements to be given. So at that time, communicable diseases are transmitted very easily. So population displacement may lead to introduction of communicable diseases to the indigenous population or the migrant population. Disruption and contamination of water supply is common, very common in natural disaster. So there is routine disruption of routine control progress work as fun and personal are diverted. Ecological changes favor breeding of vectors which increases the vector population density. Zoonosis, the disease can be transmitted. Provision of emergency food, water, shelter in disaster situation may itself be a source of infectious disease. So there is lot and lot of chances for spreading of communicable diseases during disaster. Vaccination. So the main point is vaccination. Health authorities concentrate on vaccination for typhoid, cholera, tetanus, now COVID, etc. Next important thing is nutrition. Assess food supplies after disaster, gauge the nutritional needs of the population, budget for food rationing, monitor nutritional status of the affected population. So we have to provide the nutritious food to the affected people by doing following these things. Rehabilitation. Rehabilitation starts at the time of disaster itself. So following the first week of the disaster, the pattern of health needs will change rapidly. The focus changed to needs such as water supply, food supply, safety, basic sanitation, personal hygiene, vector disease control. So, all these factors to be kept into mind, and we have to focus on it, and we have to do need. We have to rehabilitate by keeping all these things in mind. Water supply. We must completely have the focus on water supply. Physical integrity of the system components, reassuring the capacity, bacteriological and chemical quality of water supply. The water is to be chlorinated, increases the residual chlorine up to zero point 0.7 milligram per liter, and we have to do the repair and disinfection of main and reservoirs, other water units, and we have to check it for the chemical contamination and toxicity. By doing all these things, after that, we have to supply the water to the affected people in the area of disaster. Protect the new water supplies as follows. How to protect the water supply? First one, we have to restrict the access to people and animals. Adequate excreta disposal away from the water source. We have to ensure on this particular point of disposal of waste that is not to be near the water source. It is to be away from the water source. Near the water source, cleansing activities should not carry out. We have to prohibit the cleansing activities near the water source. Upgrade well to ensure prevention of contamination. கிணறுலாம் தூர்வாரி நல்ல தண்ணியா இருக்கணும். கண்டாமினேட் ஆகாம we have to keep the upgrade the well in a good condition. Have to estimate the maximum yield of the wells. If necessary, ration the water supply. So, according to the need and necessity, the maximum yield of the water to be supplied from the wells. Then the main thing is food supply. You know very well, whenever we supply the food to the people, those who are affected at a disaster, we have to maintain and monitor the kitchen hygiene at first and hygiene of the food handlers and food suppliers even. Basic sanitation and personal hygiene is very, 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 very important, not only at the time of disaster, even at all the time. Emergency latrine should be made available. Vector control programs should be intensified and vector control should be intervened. Disaster mitigation in health sector. Mitigation work involves flood mitigation, land use planning, building code, reduction or protection of vulnerable population and structures, improving the structural quality of public building and private building, and by improving and standardizing the health facilities, food supplies, water supplies, sewage system, basic sanitary system, everything we have to concentrate and we have to do the mitigation process. Disaster preparedness. Disaster preparedness is the long term activity, we have to take care, we have to do the things, we have to prepare in well advance based on the expecting disaster. The disaster should preparedness should bring about an orderly transition from relief, recovery and sustained development. The objective of the disaster preparedness is to ensure the appropriate system and to manage it emergency way. Disaster preparedness may be individual or community or state's responsibility. It is an ongoing multi sectorial activity. What are the components of disaster preparedness? First, we have to evaluate the risk of the disaster to the country. How much the country will be at risk, we have to evaluate. We have to adapt to these standard procedures, rules, regulations, etc. Have to organize the communication, information, warning system well in advance through proper channels, proper media. Ensure coordination and response mechanism between all the sectors. Evolve the strategy for finance. Make a plan. Follow the strategy for finance. Develop public education system or program. We have to coordinate the information services with the news media. We have to organize disaster simulation exercises aiming at testing response mechanism. Develop policy relevant to disaster mitigation and disaster management systems. So these are the main components of disaster preparedness.